Welcome to Deerhound Productions. I'm DaneCat33, and we're going to be exploring the story of the Mimic, a major antagonist in the newest Five Nights at Freddy's installments, such as Security Breach and Secret of the Mimic. In my original Mimic video, we used the animatronic's origins from the Tales from the Pizzaplex books, but Secret of the Mimic has presented us with a different story, so I'll treat the games as the definitive story and simply use the books to fill in the gaps. Our story starts with Edwin Murray, a young inventor whose father owned a Murray Co. At his factory, he met Fiona.
I'm Fiona, and you are?
Edwin Murray. This is my dad's place. But that doesn't matter. I heard you were a puppeteer, and I wanted to record your voice.
Oh, well, yes, I used to be.
Well, that's great. Do you mind if I record you for a test? It's part of this new system I'm working on.
What do you call it?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't thought of a name yet.
Well, how would you describe it in one word?
I guess I would have to say helpful.
I would be delighted to help. What kind of voice should I do?
He used his and Fiona's voices to make Mr. and Mrs. Helpful, mechanical puppets that would appear throughout the factory to help guide employees. Sometime after they met, Edwin and Fiona started dating, and he eventually proposed to her through Mr. Helpful.
We just click in every way. I hope you feel the same. Not a lot of things really make me happy, but you do. I can't think of a future without you. I want to keep making magic and sharing our creations with the world forever. So, will you marry me? Please? I love you.
Pretty embarrassing, but hey, it worked. They got married, and in the early 70s, had a son named David. For his first birthday, Fiona made him a puppet wolf named Roxy. And his first gift ever was a white tiger doll, which became David's favorite toy. Sometime around here, Edwin's father passed, leaving him with Murray Co.
This is all so much. He's gone. He's gone, and now everyone is asking me what to do?
Your dad believed in you. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left it to you. If you could change anything you wanted, what would it be?
Maybe rebrand? We could start making some of my inventions for real.
It seems like after his father's death, Edwin rebranded the company to Murray's Costume Manor, aka MCM, which began to produce costumes, animatronics, and carnival games, along with various other inventions. Unfortunately, tragedy struck the Murrays. Sometime after David's second birthday, Fiona went to help the Murray's Costume Manor crew prepare for Fall Fest, an annual Halloween event that they were contracted to help with.
Ed, I hope this message reaches you as soon as you get a break. I have to go help the Fall Fest crew, just for a few days until the installation is finished. It's hard to explain. I just have this terrible feeling like I need to be there so nothing goes wrong, just in case. Trisha will babysit David while I'm gone. I love you both, and I'll be back next week.
However, as we've seen in Help Wanted 2, the event burnt down, and tragically, Fiona perished in the fire. This detail is reinforced in Secret of the Mimic's Moon game, where Fiona's statue was burnt. Her death heavily affected Edwin.
Oh, why did you go? You weren't even supposed to be there. You were supposed to be here with me and David. Oh, how am I supposed to tell David that his mother is gone? How am I supposed to raise a kid on my own? His life is ruined. My life is ruined.
Edwin couldn't raise David and manage his company without Fiona. So to babysit his child, he created M1, an animatronic endoskeleton that could fit in any costume and mimic others.
David, I want to introduce you to someone. This is M1.
Why does it look like that?
Look like what?
It's scary.
Oh, it's an endoskeleton. It won't always look like this. It'll wear fun costumes.
Like what?
Anything you want. It can fit into any costume we've created. Think of it as your new babysitter. But it doesn't get paid and go home. It'll stay with us and help around the house.
Sometime later, Edwin began to hear Fiona on his radio, and after switching to frequency 4625, he discovered something repeating her dialogue from one of David's birthday tapes.
That's good, honey, but things in the party. That's great, honey, but you're You're missing the party.
It seems like M1 watched or overheard these tapes at the Murray's home and began to mimic Fiona, turning M1 into a copy of her. I'll continue to refer to this mimic Fiona simply as M1. She isn't the real Fiona. M1 is just a program copying her. Edwin had M1 raise David while he worked at the Costume Manor. For his son's 4th birthday, he built David a playground by the factory's loading docks, and left him there on his 5th birthday as he and M1 prepped his party. After baking a cake, M1 was sent out to bring David in, but tragically, he died. In the books, David chased his ball into a road by Edwin's factory and was hit by a van. So it's likely that in the games, David was hit by a car as well, since his playground was too close to the loading docks. After this horrible tragedy, M1 urged Edwin to make a mimic of David to fix their family.
Edwin, it doesn't make sense. It's terrible, and there's no logic behind it. It happened, and you have to deal with it. You did it before. We can fix things together. I am here to help. Edwin, you can't put it off any longer. You need to try again. Build another.
For the last time, no, it wouldn't be him. Oh, you're not kidding. You're not really you. I've been so stupid.
Edwin, calm down and give it some thought. Try again. Make another, and we can all be together.
All this time wasted? I should have been having fun with him, playing games and teaching him how to make things. But I didn't. You. I let a machine raise my kid. You're not real. What was I thinking?
You do not mean that. It is me. I'm Fiona.
Stop talking like her. You're not her. I never want to hear or even think about you ever again. Ever!
However, after enough pressure from M1, Edwin eventually complied and made a copy of the M1 program named M2, with the goal of mimicking David. It's never exactly made clear if M2 had a different body, but it's heavily hinted at. In one of Secret of the Mimic's messages, it specifically mentions M2 blueprints, implying it's different from M1. Also, if Edwin was trying to rebuild his family, then putting his son and wife in the same robot body wouldn't really make sense. However, M1 does look almost exactly like M2, but it could just be reusing the same endoskeleton design. Regardless, it doesn't matter all that much. Anyways, moving on from the endoskeleton, let's focus on its program. M2 began as a copy of the M1 program. However, Edwin couldn't get M2 to work.
Every copy has failed. I don't even know why it worked the first time. But it did. It's just not ready.
It's possible that some of Fiona's memory or presence lingered around following her death and ended up in M1, explaining why it succeeded where M2 failed. An alternative theory, which I believe is more likely, is Edwin couldn't recreate David because he didn't spend enough time with him, which is something hinted at in the birthday tapes. On David's 2nd birthday, Edwin was too busy working to attend his party.
Get out here. You're missing it.
Just give me a minute. I had the best idea.
Okay.
This is
well,
it. This is the one. Bigger than the Cleanovac.
that's great, honey, but you're missing the party.
David's 2 years old. He won't remember a thing.
Then on David's 3rd and 4th birthdays, he hardly spends any time with his son before leaving to get back to work.
You better start opening. There's a lot to open. I gotta get back to work. Okay, I need you to take over now and make dinner. I gotta get back to it.
Of course.
Adding on to what we previously discussed, Edwin regrets not spending more time with David. So maybe M2 didn't work, because Edwin simply wasn't with David enough to actually get to know him. Regardless, Edwin has had enough of his robot family. After hearing M2 mimic David, he was overcome by rage, and beat the animatronic.
Stop. You're not him. You're not. Stop sounding like him.
This violence caused the animatronic to mimic Edwin's rage, turning what was supposed to be a copy of his son into a violent monster. As discovered by Twitter user Eva, Edwin's attack damaged the mimic's left arm, right leg, foot, and spine, which is evident by some of its parts in Secret of the Mimic not matching up with its blueprints, implying that Edwin destroyed these parts, forcing the Mimic to repair them. So just to be clear, M1 is the animatronic that was created to take care of David and eventually began mimicking Fiona. M2 is a copy of that program and was made to mimic David after his death. But when Edwin attacked it, it turned violent. M2 is the mimic that appears throughout the rest of the series. Anyways, M1 eventually realized that M2 had been damaged, although she didn't know the details. As a response to this discovery, she begged Edwin to finish the M2 program to stop it. She also sent Edwin blueprints for a cradle, a giant computer that she believed they can use to set boundaries for M2 to keep its replica of David and others safe. I've seen some people say that the cradle was made before M2 was attacked, but a message in Secret of the Mimic specifically mentions it's created to keep people safe, meaning that M2 has already turned hostile by this point. Sometime after getting the blueprints, Edwin built the cradle and put M1's code in it. The machine was then branded as F10N4, aka Fiona, named so because M1 is a copy of her. During all of this, Edwin was also working with Fazbear Entertainment to create the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Diners. It's revealed that he was friends with Henry and Willie Mafton, who were the founders of Fazbear Entertainment. And Afton was the main villain in the original games. They had MCM develop animatronics, spring locks, and even a mock-up of the pizzeria in their underground research and development. But as they worked together, things started to take a turn.
What the hell was that? They treat me like some contractor to crack a whip at. Oh, Fiona was right. They don't think of me as a friend anymore. This is the last project I ever do for them.
Along with their dissolving friendship, they kept changing what they wanted.
Aren't they insane? The look of these new animatronics is Fiona's design, and they're great. Oh, first they approved the art, then they approved the proofs. Now they changed their minds when we're so close to final. Why would they change them now? Are they pulling my leg? The new concepts are frankly creepy. Well, it doesn't matter. I'm not changing a single bit of her work, and they can't make me. I got the change order from Hen last night. None of this makes sense. I'm almost done. Why change it now? It would be so much easier to keep using the spring locks. Just hire some teens to wear the suits like we always do.
To make things worse, Afton, and possibly Henry, were secretly working on tearing MCM apart. Afton had contacted the company's admins, and they gave him the staff information so Fazbear Entertainment could poach all of MCM's employees. One admin was even offered a manager's position at a Freddy's location in exchange for this information, and other employees were offered much higher pay at Fazbear's. During all of this betrayal, someone leaked M2 to Fazbear Entertainment. Edwin discovered this leak and was understandably furious.
Edwin, never forget. They're behind it. Don't trust them. Never tell them. They want to destroy you. I figured it out. There's a leak. Someone told them about M2. Well, they can't have it. Attention, traitors. Admin wing permissions have been revoked. And no, you can't clear out your desks. You stole my work.
But regardless of what Edwin thought, Fazbear Entertainment really liked the idea of an endoskeleton that could become any character. And we'll circle back around to that later. With Edwin's friends betraying him and his company falling apart, he grew desperate to complete the Fazbear project.
My employees, my friends, they keep leaving. The money's gone. I just need to finish the new Fazbear project, and then everyone will come back. We can get back to normal. I miss my friends.
This obsession with restoring his company caused him to avoid fixing M2, and he abandoned the cradle with M1 inside, leaving it in the mock Freddy's below MCM. He possibly stationed it there because the mock Freddy's was made using Fiona's designs, not what Fazbear Entertainment changed the animatronics to, which are the designs we see in the rest of the series. So it makes sense to store the M1 copy of Fiona in the real Fiona's version of Freddy's. Edwin shut himself away in their home, and eventually, M1's communications with him were severed. But even though Edwin was done with his fake family, they weren't done with him. M2, aka the Mimic, seems to have returned to Edwin's house to repair itself after he attacked it. They ran a power test in Edwin's office, but it exploded, destroying a chunk of the room and causing a small fire. This injured Edwin, and he begged for M2 to help, but instead, it just mimicked him, treating him like how he neglected David. It also mentions that it's upgraded itself.
Please. I can't move. I can't feel my legs. You know, speaking of legs, what do you think? I just finished mine. There are still a few kinks to work out. I'm sorry, M2. I lost my temper. I was always gonna fix you. Please, call for help. M2, respond. Oh, can't right now, buddy. We can do something fun tomorrow. I promise. Ask your mom if she's not busy. M2, help.
We never learn if Edwin got help, and while blood can be found in his house, there's no corpse anywhere. However, we do know that the Mimic finished repairing itself. As we previously discussed, comparing the blueprints and endoskeleton in Secret of the Mimic shows what parts it had repaired. After Edwin shut himself away in his home, Phasma Entertainment sent their workers to retrieve the M2 schematics. M1 decided to use the situation to her advantage. She tried to get the Phasma employees to deliver the schematics to her, gaining their trust by mimicking the Phasma Entertainment dispatch voice. She planned to obtain the schematics for Edwin so he could repair M2 and stop it.
We must convince him to repair M2. That is all that I want.
However, all of the Phasma workers ultimately failed her. Every team was murdered by M2 and stuffed into costumes throughout the manor. This leads into the main gameplay of Five Nights at Freddy's Secret of the Mimic. In 1979, Phasma Entertainment recruits another employee to retrieve the M2 blueprints. That being Arnold, who isn't in the best of spirits.
I just finished a 36-hour shift, and I'm struggling to stay awake. Frankly, I tried to tell my manager that I can't work like this anymore.
Phasma Entertainment's dispatch doesn't care how he feels, and sends him to Murray's costume manor. He tells Arnold that per Edwin's contract, his absence gives Phasma Entertainment legal ownership of everything he's developing for them, so Dispatch instructs him to retrieve their property, even though in reality, they want him to steal the M2 schematics. We do learn in a message from Afton that Phasma Entertainment does own Edwin's land, so they're not entirely trespassing. Anyways, Dispatch warns him that there's still some movement in the building. Arnold drives his van to the MCM facility, and finds it abandoned, since Phasma ended up stealing all of its workers and Edwin disappeared. You can also see another Phasma Entertainment van in the MCM parking lot, likely from another employee who was killed by the Mimic prior to Arnold's arrival. Moving on, he takes a data diver from his van. This device allows him to access the MCM facility. He enters the building and steps into an awesome welcome show. Sadly, it breaks down, and he makes his way into the facility. He talks with Dispatch at the security office, who tells him that they're still detecting movement in MCM, and explains that's the M2 animatronic, whom I'll start referring to as the Mimic from here on out. Dispatch also explains the Mimic's abilities and murderous agenda to Arnold, and warns that the Mimic could be hiding in any costume.
He was working on an endoskeleton that can adapt to any costume or character, large or small, with the ability to take on the persona of the character it occupies. With the addition of the aforementioned homicidal tendencies, of course.
He tells him to update his data diver so he can access the power room. He does so and makes his way there. After solving a puzzle to restore power, he gets a quick glimpse of the Mimic wearing an elephant costume before it flees. He returns to the security office, and Dispatch reveals to Arnold that Phasma Entertainment believes the Mimic has a lot of potential, so they want him to retrieve the M2 schematic and collect the animatronic.
And after you find that schematic for us, we can certainly try to maybe find a way to probably save your life from it. If that's not incentive enough to find the schematic, then I don't know what is.
However, he can't use his current data diver permissions to get into Edwin Murray's suite where the schematics are, so he needs to head to the manager's office to get the next available upgrade. Arnold opens the main hall to reach the office, but suddenly the Mimic breaks out of a wardrobe and begins to search for him. Luckily, he's able to sneak past the animatronic and continue into the main hall, passing a drawing of David and M1. Shortly after, he enters an elevator to the office. But when he exits it, he discovers the path forward is inaccessible due to a missing hand crank. Arnold quickly finds one attached to a music box. After removing it, a giant clown animatronic named Jackie pops out of the box. She doesn't pose any threat, so he leaves, and after getting a data diver upgrade as well, He enters the manager's office, where he encounters a digityper bot and most importantly, a generator. However, unbeknownst to Arnold, when he left Jackie's room, the Mimic crawled into her suit and adapted to her character. Later in the game, you can discover a hole in the wall behind her music box, possibly explaining how the Mimic got into her. After Arnold powers the generator, Jackie, now being warned by the Mimic, crawls into the office, tearing herself out of the music box to get inside. Before she can kill him, she's distracted by the digityper. She brutally destroys him and throws him through a wall. Arnold quickly jumps through the hole, but the floor beneath him collapses, plunging him further into MCM. He quickly makes his way through the facility as Jackie pursues him.
I found you!
After taking an elevator up, Jackie pops out of a vent in front of Arnold and begins chasing him, using her stretchy arms to destroy the floor and drag herself forward. Eventually, he gets the upper hand, managing to crush her beneath a door and escape into a vent. However, she quickly catches up to him. But before she can eliminate this intruder, the animatronic's weight causes the vent to collapse. Arnold lands in the security office, and while we never see Jackie's corpse, we know that the Mimic exited her body. Dispatch tells Arnold to pick up, but when he does, he hears some glitching. And when his voice returns, it's much more generically friendly sounding, unlike the very human voice from earlier. This signifies the M1 has replaced Dispatch's voice, which is further reinforced when Dispatch suddenly knows more about the Mimic.
So we did some digging to learn more about that bothersome endoskeleton that keeps relentlessly pursuing you. From what we can tell, it was designed to keep Murray's son entertained while Murray worked. It would mimic the actions of those around it. At some point, the endoskeleton was exposed to some sort of violence, the details of which are a little fuzzy. This mimic endoskeleton then copied that violent behavior.
M1 then tells him that there's another upgrade station in the showrooms, and instructs him to head back through the welcome show. After fixing the show, the lobby doors open, and Arnold enters the MCM lobby. It's worth noting that by this point in the game, you can sometimes hear the Mimic using David's voice, repeating things from recordings or tapes.
I baked it myself for David's special day.
I baked it myself for David's special day.
Anyways, the elevator to the showrooms is out of order, and Arnold discovers the cause of which is an elephant head lodged in the gears. After interacting with Mrs. Helpful, he finds out that he needs to collect the repair cassette from the second floor balcony. When Arnold returns to grab the repair tape, the Mimic reveals itself, having adapted to another costume. Luckily, Arnold keeps all of his limbs intact while retrieving the tape and manages to repair the elevator. He takes it to the showrooms and enters the Big Top showroom, which features a collection of carnival attractions. After retrieving a ticket from Mr. Helpful, he gives it to the Big Top, an animatronic that appears to be a predecessor to the Music Man animatronics seen in the previous games. To progress further, Arnold has to play the games to win a spin on the prize wheel, but after completing each game, the power will go out and the Big Top will turn hostile, signifying that the Mimic has adapted to it. And before you ask how the animatronic fits inside that thing, Dispatch said it could fit in any character regardless of its size, and I guess regardless of logic. Anyways, Arnold has to sneak past it and restore power to the room as the Big Top crawls toward him. Once power is restored, it'll become friendly again, and Arnold can play more games. Repeat this a couple more times, and now Arnold has enough prize wheel spins to win the grand prize, which allows him to access the top of the room. As he's climbing up, the Big Top breaks through the ceiling and flees onto the roof. After upgrading his data diver, Arnold ends up there too, and the Big Top ambushes him. He escapes back into the facility, but the animatronic breaks through the roof and pursues him down a staircase. A chaotic chase ensues, with the Big Top acting very destructive thanks to the Mimic wearing it. Eventually, it corners Arnold at a staircase, but similar to Jackie, the animatronic's weight causes the structure to collapse. The fall damages Big Top, and the Mimic flees the animatronic body. When Arnold gets back to the office, he begs M1 to send help, but she just ignores him and directs him to the upgrade station in the demonstration theater. After solving another puzzle to restore power, the Mimic reveals itself, and Arnold has to sneak past the mascot and travel into the workshop to reach the theater. However, he needs a completed Director's Springlock suit to progress. So he sneaks around the workshop, finding parts to assemble the suit, as the Mimic patrols the area. Once the pirate captain's springlock suit is completed, Arnold climbs inside of it and walks to the director's lift, which takes him up. Before he can get to the next lift, the power goes out, and the mimic appears. But luckily, he doesn't recognize Arnold inside the suit. Instead, it just waves at him. After restoring the power, Arnold takes the lift up to the MCM television studio. This studio was designed by Edwin to eliminate the need for talent. Instead, it relies on a stage manager software to keep the show on track. Writers are also replaced by a story template that can be supplied with character names, locations, and genre, allowing the show to write itself. The whole show is automated, only requiring a single director to shoot targets to progress the story. Arnold performs a show about Foxy, Roxy, and the rest of their pirate crew preparing for the captain's birthday party, only to be attacked by Rocktopus. However, the theater collapses. Arnold falls off the balcony and is knocked out. He awakens in the doll hospital, where MCM's animatronics are repaired by Nurse Dolly, who also recycles old parts.
I am recycling. Edwin Murray coined the term, and it will soon be an industry standard.
Arnold goes further into the doll hospital, where Nurse Dolly skids around on tracks. If he gets in her way, she'll kill him, showing that the mimic has already adapted to her body. He avoids her as he fixes a door, but after opening it, Arnold discovers that the mimic has ripped Dolly right off her track, and she emerges into the hallway before him. He quickly ducks into a side room and distracts her as he powers up a generator, opening the vent and allowing him to escape the room. He unfortunately discovers that the only way to leave the doll hospital is by throwing a ton of trash into the incinerator to meet the energy quota. Arnold must be careful to avoid Dolly while searching for the trash. Once the chute is full, he has to enter the maintenance room to empty it. Dolly goes down there too, but by emptying the trash into the conveyor belt, he knocks her down and into the incinerator. Now that the energy quota has been met, Arnold can leave through the power reactor. As he's descending, a melted Dolly smashes through the incinerator wall and runs after Arnold. He flees and has to sneak past her to escape the doll hospital. He narrowly makes it out through an elevator, but it quickly breaks down. Arnold manages to repair it, but as the elevator starts to go up, Dolly jumps down, landing on top of it, and the extra weight makes it stop. Arnold adjusts the elevator to account for Dolly's added weight, and it quickly begins to move. As the elevator ascends, the mimic peels itself out of Dolly's body and leaps out of the elevator, escaping before it crashes into the ceiling, crushing Dolly's melted body. Once Arnold returns to the office, everyone points him to the warehouse, telling him to go through there to reach the admin wing and Murray's office. As he enters the area, the mimic appears, now wearing a Chica costume, which was designed by Fiona for her original location, that being Chica's party world. Arnold restores power to the warehouse and proceeds into the loading docks, making a path so he can reach the administration wing. Here, the mimic continues wearing the Chica costume and skates through the area. Her cupcakes are also scattered throughout the location and will alert the mimic if Arnold gets too close to them. After sneaking around the offices, he can proceed upstairs to get the executive upgrade, allowing him to finally enter Edwin's office and steal the M2 blueprints. But of course, before he can leave, the mimic skates on in, forcing him to escape through a vent. He falls into a room and has to take the elevator down into the MCM tunnels, where he encounters Tiger. He's a costume version of David's white tiger plush, and his ghostly behavior has led a lot of people to believe he's David's spirit. He can seemingly teleport around, and flashes of him appear over Arnold's vision. Anyways, after escaping the tunnels, M1 calls Arnold back to the security office. And now that he has the M2 blueprints, she requests that he hands them over. From here, the game branches out into 3 possible endings, and we'll go through them one by one. The normal ending, named Overtime, has Arnold giving M1 the data diver with the M2 blueprints. She opens the loading dock door where his van is stored, and he drives off safely. However, when the real dispatch calls him on the radio, it's revealed to Arnold that he hasn't actually been talking with dispatch.
Arnold, there you are. We've been trying to get a hold of you all night.
What? I just talked to you. You told me to give you the data diver and I could go home.
So you admit it? You misplaced company property.
No, I gave it to you.
Fazbear Entertainment will hold you personally responsible for lost or stolen property.
And things don't get much better. When When he wakes up, he's now been stuffed inside a springlock suit and trapped in MCM's mock Freddy's. The Mimic watches as the band performs and the game ends. For the next two endings, instead of giving M1 the data diver, Arnold uses the executive clearance to run Edwin's parachute program. This opens up a hatch in the floor that he can use to escape, and M1 is very displeased.
You have made your choice. You are not going to make it out of here alive.
Now it's your turn to play dress up. When he catches you, which one will he choose? Who are you deep down inside? Another worker bee? A bumbling bee? Perhaps a busy bee? In many ways, tonight has been a comedy of errors. A jester would suit you well. Or a bunny, running from danger, scared and stupid, searching for a hole to hide in.
Arnold travels back to the welcome show and starts the goodbye show. This activates a lift that Arnold takes down below MCM. But as he descends, he's suddenly pursued by Big Top, who is likely being warned by the Mimic again. Occasionally, the lift will stop, and Arnold quickly has to pull the levers to keep moving down and prevent the Big Top from catching him. After he safely exits the lift, Big Top crashes down, having been abandoned by the Mimic again. Arnold continues into MCM's research and development, where he discovers the mock Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. When he turns on the power, the Mimic crawls out of a pile of animatronics, now appearing as a horrific abomination of prototype Freddy's characters. It begins to search the dining room. Arnold can avoid it by using old springlock suits scattered throughout the building. These include Monty, a dog character named Bub, as a reference to the Sparky Hoax character, and prototype versions of Fredbear and Spring Bonnie. These characters seem to be the original Freddy's band that Fiona designed before Fazbear Entertainment replaced them with Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. Arnold puts the springlock suits in front of the pizzeria's security cameras to trick M1 into closing all the doors and draining power. Once the power's out, M1's fake dispatch voice finally fades away, revealing its true identity. Inside the office, Arnold discovers the F10 and 4 computer.
Despite the circumstances, it is nice to meet you face to face. It is lonely down here.
What? What are you? A computer? Your voice changed. What is going on?
You have questions, but there is no time. I'm almost out of power. You can still be useful. My communications with Edwin have been severed. Edwin abandoned us. He shut himself away in our home. Head to the main house and activate the communications sub-terminal. I have a message for him. We must convince him to repair M2. That is all that I want. If you do not, M2 will never stop pursuing you. Tell Edwin, I still love him. Entering standby mode.
After this, M1 opens up a passageway, which connects to a cool cart ride that takes Arnold to Edwin's house, where the Mimic has followed him. Speaking of which, throughout this ending, the Mimic copies the voices and dialogue of almost every other character in the game. Anyways, here, the game once again branches into multiple endings. We'll start with the storytime ending, since, similar to Overtime, I don't think it's canon, but more on that later. Getting this ending actually requires you to do some stuff before fleeing MCM. The first step is to store all 25 collectibles in the inventory system, one of which is David's White Tiger plush, which can only be obtained after completing the unfinished business ending, further hinting that this isn't canon. With all these items, Arnold can then play the Moon.exe game. This game seems to represent the Murrays, with the moon being Edwin and the sun being Fiona/M1. The sun can even be seen on M1's screens. There's also a baby owl that represents David. The main gameplay is kind of vague, but it seems like we're playing as M2, aka the Mimic. Later in the game, the sun gives us the mask of the baby owl, representing how M1 wanted to make M2 as a replacement for David. It is worth noting that the sun actually killed the baby owl. After collecting the mask, something is cooking in the oven, and the sun claims the owl left. Later you're told he's gone. This might mean that M1 killed David. After all, Edwin did send her to fetch him from the playground. She was at the scene of the crime. Maybe she wanted David to die so her son could be a robot like her. However, she very clearly loves and misses him. so I don't think she would have hurt David. Upon seeing us wearing the mask, the moon cries, similar to how M2 copying David made Edwin upset. We then build a statue of the moon and end up in the MCM lobby. Helper tells us we've rebuilt ourselves, but we're now split in two, destruction and life, referring to the Mimic's rage and its copy of David. We then have to face the animatronics from the game. After defeating Jackie, we encounter Big Top, and when giving him a Fall Fest ticket, he says this is where the sun left, referring to how Fiona died at Fall Fest. Afterwards, we repair Dolly's patience and give Chica cake, allowing us to access David's bedroom. Here we follow a storybook to arrange David's birthday presents in the correct order, and once that's done, we get a vague clue for the ending. The end comes from the beginning. To sleep the tiger, you must complete the story. The Sun, aka M1, then gives us the glitch permission to bring David back. With this, Arnold can access more rooms in Murray's house, which contains storytime tapes. After collecting all 6 of them, Arnold puts them in some tape players, which opens a vent leading into David's old bedroom. Using his tiger plush, he activates the bedtime story recorded by Edwin and M1. The Mimic appears in the closet, but something surprising happens. The storytime tapes revert M2 into its copy of David. As the bedtime story is told, the Mimic will flip between its rageful side and its replica of David. The story ends with a lesson that the Mimic needed to hear.
And they realized that anger didn't solve anything.
The Mimic's chest then opens up, revealing a port. After using his data diver, Arnold manages to reset the Mimic back to an adorable copy of David. With the animatronic calmed down, it lies in bed, ending the game peacefully.
Your parents love you. Sleep tight.
The biggest and most likely true ending is called Unfinished Business. At Edwin's house, Arnold finds those David birthday tapes that I've been discussing throughout the video. They all include a number at the end, and when put together, Arnold can use this code to access Edwin's office. When he gets up there, he finds the blown up room, which, as previously discussed, is a result of the Mimic's failed power source. On Edwin's computer, Arnold opens up his surveillance room, where he accesses the Mechanical X-Form Experimental Storage 1, also known as MEXes, which seems to be the name of the Cradle computer. Arnold then activates Cradle.exe, which is the reason I believe this is the true ending. Later in the Security Breach DLC, Ruin, we see the F10N4 machine is now branded as MEXes. This ending is the only one where we activate MEXes and its Cradle program, meaning it must be the canon ending, as it later leads into Ruin. After running Cradle.exe, Arnold turns to see the Mimic. He quickly closes the door and flees through a secret passage. He powers up a generator, which starts a fire in Edwin's house. He narrowly escapes, and as he descends, M1 finally gets her communication through, not realizing that Edwin's already gone, which gives this ending an especially hopeless feeling.
Knowing you are still trying to hold it all together. But the company doesn't matter anymore. It's over. You need to let it go. I beg you, put it all aside and fix M2. It is not too late. I miss you. But I miss my child. I watched him grow up through this machine. I want him back. It's not too late to fix our family. Entering standby mode.
The Mimic proceeds to chase Arnold through the tunnels. As he flees, some weird-looking creations flood the area, and in the files, these are referred to as Proto-Mimic, likely meaning these are Edwin's failed M2 prototypes. Anyways, Arnold runs onto a platform and the Mimic lands in front of him. Arnold then escapes up the platform. He gets into another car and exits into a now burning Murray's Costume Manor. He escapes through the front doors and bolts into his van as the prototype Mimics run toward him. He manages to drive away, but multiple animatronics are still trying to get him, one of which is unfortunately the Mimic. It punches through his windshield, making Arnold crash the van. When he wakes up, the van is on fire and the Mimic approaches him. It reaches inside the van, but instead of killing him, it rips off his data diver, stealing back its blueprints. It then simply flees the wreckage, leaving Arnold to die. With Secret of the Mimic ending on a cliffhanger, the only indicator we have for where the story goes next is Tales from the Pizzaplex. And yes, while I know the books aren't entirely canon to the games, Secret of the Mimic made it clear that roughly the same events happen in the games and books, but details surrounding them are altered. For example, in Tales and Secret of the Mimic, we have Edwin, Fiona, and David. Fiona eventually dies, and Edwin makes the Mimic to take care of David. But David also dies, and Edwin beats the Mimic, causing it to mimic rage. He disappears, and Phasma Entertainment gains ownership of his property. They then send multiple teams to his factory, and the Mimic murders them. Obviously, a lot of details are different, but the books and games still share a lot of similarities. Meaning that, for the most part, what we see in the books can be applied to the games. So I'll assume that the rest of the Tales Mimic stories at least somewhat happened. I think it's likely that some of these Mimic stories will eventually be adapted to the games, similar to what happened with Secret of the Mimic. But until then, the books remain our only source to explain the gaps in the Mimic story. And again, I'm not saying this is exactly how things went down in the games, but something similar likely happened. So I'll recap the events of the books to fill in the gaps of the games. In the Tales from the Pizzaplex epilogues, we learn that Phasma Entertainment eventually retrieved the Mimic. With it in their possession, they produced a line of Mimic endoskeletons. Similar to the original Mimic, these can retract and expand their limbs. And they have a contracting torso, allowing them to fit into any mascot costume. The animatronic creation team didn't want to program in every show routine, so they programmed the Mimic to watch and learn, observing other routines and mimicking them. However, the programming was tricky, and it seems like the original Mimic began copying people in unintended ways. It's implied that this could have caused a potential disaster, so Phasma Entertainment planned on deactivating the Mimic endoskeletons. Decades later, after the events of the original games, Phasma Entertainment has developed a horrendous reputation, thanks to all the tragedies and destruction associated with their brand. They're desperate to revitalize their image. Their first attempt involves hiring an indie game developer by the name of Steve Snodgrass. They had him develop indie games based on the real events of the series, in an attempt to poke fun at how outlandish the stories of dead kids and possessed robots sound. This backfires and tarnishes the brand further, so they hire a development team to create a VR game, which would make fun of the indie games and the stories surrounding the brand. To speed up the programming, they send the development team vintage circuit boards, which are scanned into the game to recreate past performances and personalities in an instant. Unfortunately, all this corner cutting comes at a price. A malicious code manifests in the game. This anomaly appears as a yellow rabbit costume similar to the one worn by William Afton, and this character is known as Glitchtrap. While this might just seem like William Afton is back from the dead, it's strongly implied that this is actually the Mimic. We made a whole video covering this theory if you're interested in learning more, but I'll still try to mention the key points. First, Glitchtrap's appearance obviously isn't the springlock suit worn by Afton. It's much more similar to the MCM costumes. Every time we've seen Afton, he's worn his Yellow Rabbit springlock suit or some sort of variant of it. So Glitchtrap manifesting as a costume rather than Afton's springlock suit already hints that this isn't him. There's still a lot more evidence that we'll cover as it appears in the series. This leaves the question of how the Mimic's program ended up in the game. The circuit boards Glitchtrap originated from were used to recreate past performances and personalities in VR, so it's possible that these came from the original Mimic or Mimic endoskeletons, as they were supposed to observe and copy other animatronics, making their circuit boards the perfect source to remake Phasma's characters for the game. But this brings up another big question: why would the Mimic copy Afton? It's possible it's similar to how M1 learned about Fiona from the birthday tapes and began to mimic her. The M2 program learned about Afton as the Freddy Fazbear virtual experience was being developed, and began to mimic him, developing the Glitchtrap persona. Secret of the Mimic shows us that the Mimic can have multiple personas at the same time. We hear it mimicking David and Edwin, and it jumps between different animatronics or mascot characters throughout the events of the game. So it's entirely possible it created an Afton persona after learning about him from the game's development. Regardless, he was first noticed by the game's beta tester, Jeremy. who reported experiencing night terrors after playing the game, possibly due to an encounter with Glitchtrap.
He wasn't talking about it like someone telling a friend about his dreams, though. He was pale. Looked like he hadn't eaten in days. He spent an hour talking in Dale's office, but it didn't look like he was given much sympathy. He went directly back to the testing room. He doesn't even jump anymore. Nothing scares him. He just stands there like he's talking to someone.
Things escalated, and it's implied Jeremy injured himself with the development team's paper guillotine. It's never clearly stated whether he died or not, but it's enough to get the company off the VR game, and they transfer it to another team. As the first company is wrapping up their development, a woman known only as Tape Girl takes over beta testing. She discovers Glitchtrap and leaves behind recordings to warn the future development team.
There was a character I couldn't make out who it was, standing at the end of the hall. But then it was looking in the window, and not like Chica or Bonnie would. It was like it was actually looking in the window, seeing what I was doing.
However, on her last day, she realizes that Glitchtrap has attached himself to her recordings. She's unable to delete them since she stored them in a protected area. So instead, she fragments them into 16 tapes, scattering Glitchtrap's code throughout the game and temporarily stopping him. Following this, the game is passed to another company, where a woman named Vanessa works. Some people speculate that she might be William Afton's daughter, since her movie counterpart is. She also had a manipulative father named Bill, which is commonly a nickname for William, but we'll learn more about that later. In the main gameplay of Help Wanted, she continues beta testing the game until she discovers Tape Girl's logs and starts to collect them, unknowingly reassembling Glitchtrap. He begins to appear in the lobby, and with each tape collected, he gets clearer and closer to Vanessa. He makes weird sounds, which turn out to be a disoriented version of Tape Girl's recordings.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Glitchtrap mimicking Tape Girl's dialogue further hints that he's the mimic. This is also implied in the final level, Pizza Party. This features Vanessa following messages from a Yellow Rabbit plush so she can reach a birthday party. Eventually, she finds herself backstage. Some birthday cake and pizza are there too, but the most important inclusion in this party is Glitchtrap. He opens up the curtain and beckons Vanessa forward. After following him, she appears on stage with a microphone, seemingly having been stuffed in Freddy Fazbear. This ending is very reminiscent of the overtime ending from Secret of the Mimic. Both endings feature the main villain stuffing us in an animatronic suit on the Freddy Fazbear's pizza stage as the main credits roll in front of us. Comparing them visually, it's a very clear parallel. These similar endings further imply Glitchtrap is the M2 program manifesting in the VR game. In Secret of the Mimic's other endings, the Mimic even wore a Bonnie mask with rabbit ears, possibly foreshadowing its future Glitchtrap appearance. Anyways, despite this being the final level, Help Wanted is far from over. The next to last recording reveals to Vanessa that she's been reconstructing Glitchtrap by collecting the tapes. But at this point, it's too late to stop him. However, the final recording reveals that Tape Girl had planned to kill Glitchtrap. According to her, he wants to escape the game by merging with someone playing it. Tape Girl explains that pressing the lobby switches in a specific order will cause a hard reset of the game and flush the memory, killing Glitchtrap. Eventually, he appears in the lobby and tries to merge with Vanessa. When she follows Tape Girl's instructions, she's transported behind a locked door, with Glitchtrap telling her to be quiet as he retreats into the darkness. It seems like neither Glitchtrap nor Vanessa's plans worked out. Glitchtrap wasn't able to merge with Vanessa, but it seems like part of him still managed to slip into her mind. Back in the lobby, he's been transformed into a plushie. In the Curse of Dreadbear DLC, Vanessa returns to play some new Halloween levels. Most of these are just fun bonus levels, but the corn maze holds a dark secret. When Vanessa plays the level, she manages to evade Grim Foxy, and when she collects all the maze's keys, a purple glitchy key spawns. This opens a hatch in the center of the maze, and inside is a strange white rabbit mask. After returning to the main lobby, Vanessa wears this mask, and holds the Glitchtrap plush to communicate with him.
Yes, I hear you. I know. No. There's no miscommunication. I understand. Yes, I have it. I made it myself. I think you would like it. No one one suspects anything. Don't worry. I'll be ready. And I won't let you down. It will be fun.
From this, we can glean that Vanessa and Glitchtrap are planning something big. After help wanted, Phasma Entertainment successfully revitalized its image. And soon after, they began construction on Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex, a giant entertainment venue. The building is being constructed over the remains of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Place, the location where the remaining possessed animatronics were burnt at the end of the 6th game. The tales from the Pizzaplex epilogues take place early in the Pizzaplex's development, when the building is nothing more than a framework. And just to reiterate, these events in the books likely didn't happen exactly the same as they did in the games. But since they're our only source of information for the time being, I'll assume these events somewhat happened the same. Anyways, the new Pizzaplex animatronics are delivered to the construction site. They're all gleaming and in brand new perfection, except one, the Mimic. The book puts us in the perspective of Gil, a member of the crew renovating the burnt pizza place, which Phasma Entertainment plans on turning into a museum or something. Gil sees the delivery, and most importantly, the strange animatronic in the truck. He takes the Mimic into the pizza place, and it's now that we get a proper description for it. It has a collection of metal rods, curved plates, and an impressive system of ball joints and pistons. Its head is described as shiny, with bent rabbit ears attached. On the contrary, its body is dark and discolored, as if it survived some sort of fire, possibly referring to the fire at the end of Secret of the Mimic. The animatronic's head being shiny implies it was replaced sometime before the epilogues, explaining why the animatronic's head in Secret of the Mimic and Ruin looks so different. It's because it got a new head. Gil plugs one of its cables into his laptop and activates a cleanup protocol. Its wide eyes begin to glow orange, the signature color of the Mimic. It then shifts its focus to Gil, and opens its mouth. In a deep, flat voice, it says, awaiting instructions. Gil instructs it to break the limbs and heads off all the pizza place endoskeletons and pile them up. But when the Mimic repeats those instructions, it doesn't include endoskeletons in its description. It begins to effortlessly disassemble the endoskeletons scattered throughout the pizza place. But things quickly go south. Another worker, Danny, witnesses the Mimic quickly tear off Gil's arms, and blood gushes out of his sockets. It then twists and snaps his head off his body. Judging from how the Mimic didn't repeat endoskeletons in its list of what to disassemble, it looks like it ignored that command so it could use the cleanup protocol to kill more people. Another crew enters the building to see what all the ruckus is, and the Mimic quickly sets its sight on new victims. Danny runs through the carnage. He's the only survivor of the massacre, and he quickly orders some men to pour concrete over the doorway, sealing the Mimic inside the pizza place. This is a big reason why I think the epilogues happen somewhat similar in the games. In Ruin, we discover the Mimic in the pizza place, and it's never explained how it got there. So the epilogues, while probably not being entirely canon, seem to explain how the Mimic ended up in the building following Secret of the Mimic. Hence why I'll continue to recap these events. In the following epilogue, we're introduced to a group of teens at a nearby carnival. This includes jocks Wade and Joel, cheerleaders Nick and Hope, her boyfriend Adrian, along with Kelly, Jace, and Lucia. Joel suggests breaking into the Pizzaplex construction site, but Lucia isn't as thrilled about the Pizzaplex as everyone else in town is. She's read stories about the old Freddy's pizzerias, and even knows about the Pizzaplex being built over the pizza place, which has a questionable past, likely one it received due to the fire at the end of Pizzeria Simulator. After a brief debate, the group settles on exploring the Pizzaplex, and they notice the pizza place's roof under the construction site. They travel down there, ignoring the concrete sealed doorway, and eventually they break into the building through a vent chute. They land in a storage room, where Lucia sees robotic arms, legs, and heads, likely disassembled by the Mimic. Speaking of which, they quickly find its pile of human and endoskeleton parts, and Lucia counts at least 11 bodies. The teens return to the vent chute, only to find it's been crushed together, likely done by the Mimic to prevent them from escaping. From here on out, the epilogues follow the teens desperately searching for a way out, as the Mimic kills them off one by one. In the third epilogue, as Hope and Nick explore a costume wardrobe, Nick is suddenly yanked inside. He stumbles back towards Hope, now with his arm missing. The Mimic's hands quickly spear through costumes. It grabs Nick's neck and twists his head off. Hope can only stare into the mimic's now black pupils and observe its blood-soaked appearance. It takes a step toward her, making her snap back to reality and flee. She regroups with other teens and through sobbing informs them of Nick's death. They don't feel comfortable out in the open, so they hide in parts and services, where Hope describes the mimic to them. Lucia looks at the animatronic suits surrounding them, one of which is a huge gray dog with purple poodle-like scruffs on top of its head and around its neck, wrists, and ankles. This description pretty closely matches Sharpay from Secret of the Mimic. Lucia's gaze then falls on a friendly-looking dog costume with a spiked collar, whose tongue is sticking out, which also appears to be another costume from Secret of the Mimic. Hope wonders if the endoskeleton could get into one of those costumes. As Lucia is studying the friendly-looking dog, the costume suddenly moves. The light goes out, and when it comes back, the mimic grabs Hope's biceps. It tears her arms from her body. She lets out a horrific shriek as it flips her upside down and wrenches her legs free of her hips. The mimic inverts her body and stops her screaming by ripping her head off. The teens bolt down the hall as the animatronic pursues them. In the fourth epilogue, Jocks, Wade, and Joel explore the pizza place's systems room. Joel thinks they can escape through one of the furnace's maintenance chutes. He climbs up the interior handholds, but a giant fan stops him just short of the visible sunlight outside. They can't figure out how to disable the fan, but Joel remembers how the lights went out when the mimic killed Hope. He realized something about it affects electronics, so if they lured it close enough to the chute, it'd turn off the fan. Joel volunteers Wade to lure the murder robot into the room. Meanwhile, in an old office, Kelly and Lucia are attempting to call for help with an old radio. While searching through a filing cabinet, they discover the Mimic's operator manual. They learn about the animatronic's reconfiguring abilities and its name, which notably was the first time the Mimic's name was ever revealed in the series. The manual mentions that if a Mimic is encountered, its power source should be removed and it should be disassembled, which further solidifies to the teens that they're in danger. Speaking of danger, Wade hears the Mimic in the employee lounge and darts into the kitchen. The endoskeleton follows him inside, making the lights go out. Wade ducks behind a counter and clumsily knocks over some pans. He gathers them up and tosses them back at the Mimic as he flees, but they simply bounce off the endoskeleton. It exits the kitchen and follows him into the hallway. Wade needs some distance between himself and the Mimic, so he runs through the employee lounge and into the lobby. He carefully steps towards the dining room and hears the animatronic's footsteps close by. He realizes it didn't follow him. Instead, it went back the other way around into the dining room. The lights go out, and before Wade can run, the Mimic grazes his forearm with its metal fingers. He rolls away as the Mimic tries to grab him. Luckily it misses, but its razor-sharp fingers still slice into his skin. Wade flees into the arcade and circles back around into the dining room. In a moment of desperation, he hides in the pile of dismembered body parts. The Mimic approaches the pile, but walks away, giving Wade the chance to run back to the systems room with the Mimic in pursuit. Meanwhile, Joel's hanging onto the chute fan, awaiting Wade and the Mimic. Wade finally reaches the room and begins to climb up the chute as the Mimic causes the lights to go out, deactivating the fan as well. However, he's too slow. He screams as the Mimic drags him down and tears him apart. Joel ignores his friend's death and continues climbing up the chute and through the idle fan. Unfortunately, his shoulders get stuck, and Joel can only listen as the Mimic collects Wade's body parts and exits the room. When it leaves, the lights come back on, and so does the fan. It chews through Joel's arms and slices him in two. His lower body falls to the bottom of the chute, while the fan chops the rest of him into bits. In the following epilogue, the remaining teens hear a voice coming from the old radio. They say they're trapped in a room behind the stage in the old pizzeria, and ask for help. The teens travel to the backstage area and discover a hidden door. They knock on it and receive a knock from the other side. They figure out how to open it, revealing a small room with mascot costumes. Some people think this could be a safe room, one of the hidden rooms in the Freddy's locations, where performers would dress up in spring-lock suits, and where Willie Mafton killed his victims. Regardless, there are no survivors back there. Suddenly, the costumes on the right side of the room begin to rustle, and Lucia tells Adrian to look out as the Mimic lunges out of the room, now dressed in a monkey costume. It swipes at Adrian's arm, and the lights go out. The teens quickly flee the murderous endoskeleton. It catches Lucia's vest, but she pushes herself harder, and the Mimic loses its grip. They run away, only glancing back at the animatronic once, seeing its arms extending out. The teens return to the office. now with a better understanding of just how clever the Mimic is. Adrian and Jace set out to find Joel and Wade, deciding to journey through the vents to avoid the Mimic. After a bit of crawling, they approach the vent cover, and hear the Mimic moving behind it. The boys stay quiet as the animatronic's now bright white eyes stare out of a costume and into the duct. The vent cover rattles, and Jace closes his eyes tight. But for whatever reason, the Mimic leaves them alone, and they continue through the ducts. Meanwhile, Lucia takes another look at the user manual, and learns about the deactivation switch on the back of the Mimic's neck. She doesn't learn anything else, but she does find the pizza place's storage room key. Adrian and Jace reach the systems room, finding the remains of Wade and Joel, and most importantly, the fan leading to freedom. They return to the dining room and grab an endoskeleton leg to jam the fan with, but suddenly the lights begin flickering. Similar to how I ambushed Dominic in its origin story, the Mimic rises from a pile of endoskeleton parts, now wearing a blonde-colored dog costume. Adrian leads Jace into the arcade, and they formulate a plan. The two sneak around the pitch-black dining room, vault onto the small stage, and then slink behind the curtain to avoid being seen. Afterwards, they jump off the stage and run back into the systems room. As they're climbing up the chute, they hear the Mimic outside, and the lights begin to flicker. There's not enough time to get Jace in the chute, so Adrian tells him to hide, and he does so right as the lights go out. Adrian puts the leg in the fan. It's violently wrenched from his grasp and thrashes around the chute. The fan begins to spark, but a part of the leg jumps out of the fan and hits Adrian, making him lose his grip on the chute handholds. He falls out of the chute, right into the extended arms of the Mimic. Jace can only listen to Adrian's cries as the Mimic tears him apart. At the start of the 6th epilogue, the Mimic is back to calling for help on the radio. Lucia thinks maybe it'll learn this trick from a hide-and-seek game, but can't reason that it wouldn't work more than once. Kelly asks the Mimic where it is, and the animatronic says it's in the janitor's closet. The teens already searched that room and know no one's in there. Lucia says the Mimic's internal logic likely can't reason what they might or might not have done yet. They briefly get scared by a sound in the vents, but it's just Jace. He's incoherent, reasonably so, as he just witnessed his best friend get torn apart. But Lucia's furious, since she had a crush on Adrian. Jace forms a plan to lure the Mimic into a room and trap it inside. Then he would escape through a vent, and if it tried to follow him, its weight would make the vent collapse. The teens commit to this plan, and over the radio, they tell the Mimic to stay put, saying they'll come rescue it, while in reality, they're setting their trap. It thanks them, and Lucia comments that it's a polite murderous robot. She remembers finding the storage room key earlier, and says they should lock the Mimic in there. It interrupts them on the radio, saying it's scared, and the teens keep telling it to hang on. They figure out the specifics of their plan, but the Mimic stops responding on the radio, seemingly having caught on to their scheme. They go into the employee lounge to find some tables they can use to barricade the storage room door, but a faint clicking sound stops them. After a moment of hesitation, Lucia decides it's safe, but Jace notices a locker door twitch. He shouts at her, and the lights start flickering as the door shoots open, revealing the Mimic, now wearing a gray mouse costume. The room goes dark. Kelly drags Jace out of the room and back into the hallway. They continue into the dining room and see Lucia running towards them. Luckily, the Mimic missed her ahead and tore off some of her curly hair instead. The group hides behind a pile of rubble outside one of the party rooms, and hear the Mimic getting closer. Luckily, the endoskeleton goes down the hall. As part of their plan, they break the legs off some tables and carry them outside the storage room. Lucia and Kelly hide as Jace lures the Mimic toward him by yelling. He reasons it would suspect a trap if he's standing around, so he fiddles with the storage room door. At long last, the Mimic emerges from the employee lounge, wearing a frayed yellow cat costume. Jace rushes inside the storage room and quickly climbs into the vent. However, the Mimic's heavy footsteps shake the duct, throwing him around and weakening the vent. His shirt sleeve gets stuck on one of the seams, and upon pulling it, the rivets are popped free. More are torn loose and the seam fails. A section of the vent disconnects and Jace slides back into the storage room. He holds himself in place for a few seconds, but the Mimic grabs his legs and yanks him backward. He screams as his legs are ripped off his body and he's killed. Despite Jace's demise, Lucy and Kelly successfully lock the door and barricaded it with the tables. But as they go to regroup with Jace, they hear his screams ring throughout the entire building. The 7th epilogue features the Mimic's perspective, allowing us to get a glimpse of the endoskeleton's mind. It describes things in a very robotic manner, referring to Jace as a boy unit that had been crawling in a tunnel, aka the vent. It takes count of all the doors, boxes, and toys, possibly because Gil had told it to take inventory. The Mimic notices a doll with pigtails, which is likely a plush baby. It says this doll is staring at it, so similar to the endoskeletons in humans, it tears apart the plush and piles it up. It seems like the Mimic only destroyed this doll since it believed she was staring at it, showing it does pick and choose what it disassembles. It's not mindlessly following the cleanup protocol. The animatronic then tries to open the door, but thanks to the teens, it's locked. It uses more force, but only ends up tearing off the handle. It then reaches through the hole and opens the door, but the doorway is blocked by the table the teens place there as a barricade. Since the Mimic has no established protocol for getting through a solid wall, it gives up. It recalls watching Jace crawling through the vent, so it decides to copy him and exit the room that way. The Mimic's head fits into the vent, but its shoulders don't. The endoskeleton thinks it simply needs to take a different form, and it's programmed to take any form necessary to fulfill its functioning. It proceeds to reconfigure itself and crawl into the vent, using the sharp tips of its fingers to pierce the metal, and further compressing and contracting itself. Meanwhile, the last two teens, Lucia and Kelly, dress up in mascot costumes to blend in and avoid the Mimic. Kelly wears a blue dog costume, and Lucia narrowly avoids putting on a Springlock court jester suit. Lucia ditches the costume due to the lethal springlocks inside and wears a much safer rodent costume. The girls grab some endoskeleton arms and try to use them to break the concrete blocking the pizza place's backstage exit. As they work on getting the concrete away from the exit, Lucia hears the Mimic's footsteps, and the lights go out as it enters the backstage. Kelly and Lucia stand still in the costumes until the Mimic leaves. Or that's what they think. But after further inspection, Lucia notices a nearby Mycelium Man costume that wasn't there before. This costume previously appeared in Secret of the Mimic, and is based on the MCM Mycelium Men toys. The teens continue playing the waiting game until the costume starts moving around. It walks towards them, and something crawls out of the back of the suit. Instead of the upright form the Mimic usually takes, it has a new appearance, an abomination of metal joints and wires, vaguely resembling a mutated spider. This disturbing version of the Mimic scares Kelly into running, but Lucia yells at her to stop. She freezes, and the Mimic squirms towards the costume she's hiding inside, studying it and tapping its foot. Lucia realizes it's probably confused, because the costume wasn't in there when it entered the room. The Mimic backs away from the suit, turning like it's leaving. But instead, it quickly peels open the costume and shoves itself inside with Kelly. She screams as the Mimic crushes her inside the blue dog. The room is filled with horrific sounds of crunching and snapping, followed by spongy, wet splintering sounds. After one final crunch, Kelly stops screaming, and the blue dog folds in on itself, collapsing into a bloody pile of fur. It then stands upright, and the Mimic walks out of Lucia's sight. In the final epilogue, Lucia decides the only way she's getting out alive is by killing the Mimic. She makes a plan to trick the endoskeleton into climbing into the court jester suit and using the spring locks to destroy it. She returns to the hidden room behind the stage where the court jester is. And while disguised in her rodent costume, she begins disabling the other costume zippers. That way the Mimic's only option will be to climb into the court jester suit. As she's doing this, the costumes in the room begin to sway, and she has the disturbing realization that the Mimic is hiding in one of them. She continues disabling the costumes. And while working on a dark brown gopher, the room's dim bulb glints off something metal within. The Mimic leaps out of it. Its limbs extend and expand, searching the room for her. Lucia ducks between a blackbird and a purple lion costume. Thanks to Lucia's tampering, only two costumes are usable. A flat-furred holy tiger costume, likely a reference to David's tiger obsession, and the Springlock court jester. But none of that matters, since the Mimic finds Lucia first, and begins to crawl into the mouth of her rodent costume. By this point, the Mimic has abandoned the cleanup protocol. It crushed Kelly in the blue dog costume, and is now attempting to similarly kill Lucia. She narrowly escapes the suit, and it falls over the Mimic, who flails its arms, trying to get control of the costume. Lucia quickly wraps rope around the costume's legs, and the Mimic topples over. It reconfigures itself into a worm-like form and extracts itself from the suit's mouth. Then it reforms into its upright appearance. Lucia puts her head in the court jester suit and it baits the Mimic into it, then quickly exits as it crawls inside. She grabs a metal rod and begins beating the court jester costume, but the spring locks don't activate. The mimic begins climbing through the mouth of the costume, and a compressed piece of metal emerges, enlarges itself, and morphs into the mimic's head. Its gaze locks on Lucia and it opens its mouth. She quickly holds the metal rod like a spear and stabs into the mimic's mouth. This savagely jolts its head back, finally setting off the spring locks and filling the room with a clamoring cascade of metal striking metal. The court jester's suit violently moves all at once as the mimic is impaled by the spring locks. And the suit is soaked in the endoskeleton's oil, paralleling how the blue dog costume was soaked in Kelly's blood. After the spring locks have done their work, the mimic is left writhing inside the court jester, its head protruding from the costume's mouth, but the light in its eyes is fading. Its movements are frantic. It's now the victim. Lucia fears if she waits longer, the mimic will find a way to self-repair. She reaches behind its neck, and remembering what she learned in the user's manual, she flips the deactivation switch. It stops moving, and the mimic's murder spree is finally over, at least for now. With the pizza place mimic free, Lucia manages to escape through a window in the ladies' bathroom. She's rescued by some construction workers and smiles, finally having escaped the building. Following the events of the epilogues, the pizzaplex is fully constructed, and the mimic later plays an important role in the Storyteller. Edwin Murray also returns, now at the age of 64. This is something that may not match up with the games, since Edwin might have died after the mimic's explosion in his house. But again, until further notice, I'm going to assume the events happened somewhat the same in the games. Anyways, Edwin had spent 3 decades trying to forget his tragic life, running all across the world until eventually he ran out of money, and had to demand that Fazbear Entertainment honor the buyout of his company. He's one of Fazbear's board members, and he has to deal with Mr. Burroughs, the 35-year-old board chairman with a very high opinion of himself. Burroughs decides to fire the Mega Pizzaplex's creative development team, and replaces them with the Storyteller, an artificial intelligence program that takes pieces of previously created stories and rearranges them into new scenarios for VR, AR, and arcade games. Edwin hates this idea, but knows a lot of things could go wrong, and decides to keep it together so he can prevent a tragedy. Interestingly, Edwin gets a sense of deja vu from the Storyteller, possibly as a reference to MCM's Stage Manager, which similarly automated the creative process. Back to the story, the board continues to ignore his concerns, and decides the Storyteller should be constructed in the center of the Pizzaplex's atrium and housed inside a tree, but they argue about what type. Edwin suggests a baobab tree, one of the longest living trees in the world and the hardiest, thriving in the harshest of conditions. The board likes this idea, and a giant baobab tree is constructed in the Pizzaplex's atrium. Although the bright and shiny vibrant yellow tree hardly resembles any real tree. LEDs make up the tree's root system, which stretch out from the tree and sink into the floor. The roots are actually a network of wiring, connecting the Storyteller to all story-driven attractions, and feeding the information to the appropriate hardware, meaning that every animatronic in the Pizzaplex will get instructions from the Storyteller. Edwin isn't allowed inside the tree, which bothers him, but Mr. Burroughs claims that only the construction team is allowed inside. Edwin doesn't trust him and decides he needs to see what's going on for himself. He gathers up some cryptid memos referring to the construction, and finds out that larger parts of the Storyteller are being transferred into the tree later that night. He hides in the Monte Golf lobby and observes the construction crew moving something that takes his breath away. He has a mental breakdown and remembers a horrific event filled with blood. Edwin snaps back to reality and hides as the construction workers head in his direction. He manages to avoid detection, and he now describes the object that caused him so much distress. A giant metal white tiger head. This blast from the past is a clear reference to David's white tiger plush. Edwin is understandably rattled by this and leaves, but unbeknownst to him, the security team reported him to Mr. Burroughs. He doesn't believe Edwin is a problem just yet, as Burroughs made sure only himself and a select few of the construction members had access to the Storyteller. Unfortunately, Edwin can't find anything about the Storyteller's programming before it's activated, and he notices issues with the animatronics right away. First in the Queen of Roxy Raceway, Roxanne Wolf. This character was actually stolen from MCM. She was originally created by Fiona as a puppet for David's first birthday, before appearing in the theater show and a carnival game. This version of her is a punk rock animatronic whose self-centered and competitive attitude never sat right with Edwin. But it was what Fazbear Entertainment wanted for the character. She'd always enjoyed poking fun at others' insecurities because of her own deep-seated self-esteem issues. But when the Storyteller activates, Roxanne Wolf turns into a bully. verbally attacking anyone and anything around her, as if her lack of empathy was morphing into a more aggressive form of psychological cruelty. Other issues crop up with Glamrock Chica, who has a gluttonous nature and is especially pushy when it comes to getting pizza, but she's still one of the more loving Phasma Entertainment characters. However, similar to Roxy, she begins to act up, and her loving persona is replaced by a snarky one. No longer interested in food, she's obsessed with getting attention. She demands that Mr. Cupcake show her more deference, and he also takes on the behavior of a vicious terrier. Moving on, Montgomery Gator exhibits disturbing changes as well. Similar to Roxy, he's another character stolen from MCM. You can see a costume version of him in the Welcome Show, and a Springlock variant was one of the characters Fiona proposed for the original Freddy's. His Glamrock variant in the Pizzaplex is prone to smashing things as part of his extravagant image. He's dramatic, but harmless, at least at first. The Storyteller makes his rampages more violent, and in between tantrums, he withdraws into a depressive silence that drives children to tears. People who have played the games will likely recognize Roxy and Monty's Storyteller altered personalities, since that's how they behave in the games, which further adds to my belief that this happens, or at least similarly happens in the games. All of the Pizzaplex animatronics begin to change. Whatever trait is normal for them is shifted to the dark side. None of the characters turn homicidal, but the change is noticeable to Edwin. Soon after, the entire Pizzaplex begins malfunctioning. None of these issues are inherently dangerous, but the sheer number of problems screams danger. No one else seems to care about these issues, so Edwin decides to get into the Storyteller to learn more. He discovers records for the tree, which reveal a maintenance entrance inside the Pizzaplex's roller coaster. Edwin uses this to get inside and gazes at the Storyteller. He now notices that the giant metal white tiger head has a blue and green eye. Unlike a real tiger, it doesn't have any stripes, and its nose and mouth are the same color as the rest of its painted metal. Its teeth are silver and lit by blinking lights connected to the Storyteller's hardware. The tiger bust is mounted on one curved, yellow painted wall of the trunk's interior, and has 4 arms jutting from its neck, 2 facing up and 2 down. The floor and wall are covered in white LED lights illuminating the tiger that reminds Edwin of his past. He has another panic attack, but pushes it aside. Even so, he briefly worries the tiger will come to life and attack him. But he realizes it's stationary and quickly finds the Storyteller's terminal. It's password protected, but he still learns all he needs to know. Edwin's worst fears are confirmed. The Storyteller is running a program called a Mimic 1. In Tales from the Pizzaplex, the Mimic's AI is referred to as Mimic 1, while in the games, it's M2. Again, the books and games aren't exactly the same, but I believe that similar to the Mimic's origin story, we can apply this to the games. The reveal of the Mimic being behind the Storyteller explains why Mr. Burroughs was so determined to keep Edwin away from it, and why it's a white tiger. Mr. Burroughs had previously mentioned letting the Storyteller choose its appearance, so naturally, the Mimic chose David's white tiger. This also adds extra significance to what Edwin has said about baobab trees. He stated they were one of the longest living trees in the world, and were able to survive in the harshest conditions. This directly ties back to the Mimic, who is one of the oldest animatronics in the series and very durable. Back to the story, Edwin reflects on how the Pizzaplex is filled with issues thanks to the Mimic 1 program, and he thinks it was happening again, possibly as a reference to the events of Secret of the Mimic. After this discovery, Edwin continues sneaking into the tree, and after 5 nights, he's exhausted. He wakes up in his ratty apartment and mentions a small item on his dresser. Edwin says that he knew he should have thrown it away, but couldn't bring himself to do it. It's the only thing he has left of a time that he shouldn't have been allowed to forget. It's never explained what this is, but I think it's David's white tiger plush. It would explain why he couldn't bring himself to get rid of it. It's tragic that all these years later, he keeps a reminder of his dead son so close to him. Moving on, Mr. Burroughs goes to the Pizzaplex to see the effects of the Storyteller for himself. Employees had reported shows morphing strangely, and several characters associated with various attractions, like Monty's Gator Golf, Roxy Raceway, Bazzer Blast, and Bonnie Bowl, were exhibiting unusual behaviors. Mr. Burroughs insists the Storyteller is working perfectly fine, and instead blames Edwin. He goes to Rockstar Row and witnesses Glamrock Freddy acting like a spoiled brat, trying to tug a Freddy Fazbear plush away from a little girl. After letting the plush go, Freddy bizarrely begins to cry. Mr. Burroughs has seen enough, and as he's running out of the Pizzaplex, he trips on a toddler sitting on the floor and falls. His view from the ground shows him the Storyteller's branches, and he realizes that Edwin is using the roller coaster entrance to get into the tree. Mr. Burrows says the tech team install security cameras, resulting in a clear video of Edwin sneaking into the tree. He then overrides the security and seals the door behind him, trapping him inside the Storyteller's tree, which has no ventilation system, leaving him to suffocate. Mr. Burrows reasons that Edwin is an expensive and troublesome employee who was likely causing all the Pizzaplex's issues. A week later, Mr. Burrows can't get his mind off him and is puzzled when there's no updates on Edwin or the Storyteller. He reasons someone would have heard Edwin by now, so he assumes he somehow snuck out of the tree. Mr. Burrows enters it to figure out what's going on, and finds quite a bizarre sight. Construction paper is covering the walls, and every piece has strange drawings of stick figures, squiggles, squares, loops, triangles within triangles, and mathematical equations tangled up in the symbols. The triangles within triangles might be connected to the Murray's Costume Manor logo. Written over all of this nonsense are the words, "I'm sorry." Likely Edwin apologizing to the Mimic or apologizing for creating the Mimic. After circling the tree, Mr. Burrows finds Edwin's body, half buried under construction paper, having suffocated while scribbling yet another stick figure. Mr. Burrows doesn't fare much better. It turns out that when he locked Edwin inside the tree, it overrode all the tree's functions, trapping him inside. He starts screaming and banging on the walls, trying to get someone's attention. But the Pizzaplex is too loud for anyone to hear him. He figures if he breaks the Storyteller, the attractions would malfunction, and someone would enter the tree to fix it. However, even after ripping the cables and arms out of the Storyteller and beating the tiger, it remains functioning. The story ends with Mr. Burrows screaming for help as he slowly dies. Following the Storyteller is Tiger Rock. Unlike the previous Mimic stories, this one isn't as important, so this summary will be much more brief. Our main character is Kai, a teenager who goes to the Mega Pizzaplex with his friends Asher and Todd. Asher is excited to see the Storyteller, and while Kai assures him it's not going anywhere, turns out it is. The tree is now enveloped in plastic, and a rope barrier surrounds its base. A Pizzaplex employee tells the kids the tree is being taken down after some kind of glitch. Edwin and Mr. Burrows' deaths inside the tree likely played into its removal, but the main reason is the Mimic 1 program has been causing issues throughout the building. The tree being removed also explains why we never see it in the games. It's long gone before the events of Security Breach and Help Wanted 2. Kai and his friends decide instead to check out the Pizzaplex's VR booth. An LED sign advertises that for today only, there's an AR experience showcasing what the Pizzaplex will look like in 10 years. By the way, the story uses AR and VR interchangeably, just wanted to clarify that in case you got confused. Kai enters the AR future Pizzaplex, and it's somehow even flashier than the modern one. He meets future Glamrock Freddy, who is more realistic than the Freddy we know and love. He takes Kai through the future Pizzaplex, passing futuristic versions of attractions such as Bonnie Bowl, Roxy Raceway, and even a log ride, which seems to be based on the scrapped Foxy log ride from Ruin and Help Wanted 2. Another new futuristic attraction is Tiger Rock Trampoline, and they encounter Tiger Rock himself. He's a digital manifestation of the Mimic 1 program, taking on the appearance of a metal white tiger with a blue and green eye. Similar to the Storyteller and the tiger costume from Secret of the Mimic. Unlike Freddy, Tiger Rock speaks more fluidly and with some swag, and he's much more interested in Kai. He observes the boy from head to toe, before shaking his hand so hard it hurts his shoulder. Tiger Rock speaks to him in Hawaiian, which impresses Kai, who is half Hawaiian. The animatronic knows lots of things and loves learning, saying it's all about how you pay attention and take in what you see and hear. This is a clear callback to how the Mimic observes others and copies what it sees. He tells Kai he can show him how things work around the future Pizzaplex, and takes him through some behind the scenes areas. As they explore, Tiger Rock's grip on Kai's arm starts to hurt, and to make things worse, he yanks on his arm when they weave through the Pizzaplex crowd. As they're about to go down some slides, Tiger Rock compresses his paw around Kai's arm, and something pops. Kai has had enough. He flees Tiger Rock down a slide and into a futuristic Monty Golf. The animatronic follows him and asks if they're playing hide and seek, saying he learned how to play long ago. This ties back to the Epilogues, where the teens speculated the Mimic had witnessed a hide and seek game. The two run around some more until Tiger Rock catches Kai and tightly grabs his arms. Luckily for him, his VR time is up, and Kai's returned to the real world, or so he thinks. He begins seeing weird things, like white cats and owls with blue and green eyes, and even a clock with a humanoid face, and of course, blue and green eyes. He quickly realizes he's still trapped inside the VR simulation, which is now replicating the real world. He's ambushed in his bedroom by his sister's stuffed animals, who with their surprising strength, restrain him and try to tear him limb by limb. Possibly as a reference to the Mimic's cleanup protocol kills in the Epilogues. Tigerhawk watches him from the closet and Kai screams to wake up. Surprisingly, it seems to work. He finds himself in a whirlpool of sound and color and manages to see the Pizzaplex. It suddenly morphs into the future Pizzaplex, and a near-transparent Tigerhawk is overlaid on the scene. Kai keeps screaming to wake up, and he sees the VR booth's glass wall. He also notices a girl and her grandfather holding a strange-looking doll. His eyes widen when he sees the freaky doll, and suddenly he's freed from the VR simulation. He reunites with his friends for real this time. They tell him he was trapped in there for 5 hours, and the technicians couldn't figure out how to open the booth or break it without hurting him. Kai says he wants to forget about the experience, but Tigerhawk has other plans. Later that night, he erupts from below Kai's window, quickly grabs his forearms, and rips his arms off. As Kai loses consciousness, he watches Tigerhawk flee into the night with his arms. This ending is very confusing, considering the Mimic is likely still deactivated in the sinkhole, and Tigerhawk isn't a real animatronic. Maybe Kai is having side effects from the AR experience, allowing Tigerhawk to still interact with him in the real world. Regardless, something interesting is Tigerhawk's method of ripping off Kai's arms seems to be mimicking how Mr. Burroughs ripped off the Storyteller's arms. The final Tales from the Pizzaplex story we'll be discussing is Nexie. Once again, it's not very important, but it coincides with the events of Tigerhawk, and the Mimic 1 program plays a key role in the story. The main character here is Astrid, a young girl who is obsessed with the Pizzaplex's animatronic toys, known as Buddytronics. On Astrid's birthday, her Farfar, which is Swedish for grandpa, helps her pay for a Buddytronic. When they go to buy it, the Pizzaplex is an absolute chaos, with employees running around and a high-pitched squeal in the air. The source of all this madness is the Storyteller. Astrid watches as its lights go out for a moment and immediately come back on, but then more lights in the building flicker. She also mentions a boy in a glass dome, and this seems to be Kai trapped in the VR booth during the events of Tigerhawk. They're told the Buddytronic store is closing on account of the Pizzaplex systems going haywire, but Farfar guilt trips the employees into letting Astrid get her Buddytronic. She designs the perfect doll and names her Nexie, but because of how badly the system's been glitching, Nexie comes out horrifically deformed. All of the parts Astrid picked out have been added in strange ways that make the doll ugly, and the malfunction even changed her name to Nexie. Despite her appearance, she's a pretty smart doll, impressing Farfar and winning Astrid's heart. As they leave, they hear cheers from the VR booth, likely because this is when Kai escapes Tigerhawk's simulation. Remember how I said Kai had seen a girl, her grandpa, and a weird doll? Those were actually Astrid, Farfar, and Nexie. It's also a good time to address that Nexie might be corrupted by the Mimic 1 program. Her creation was influenced by the Storyteller going haywire, which might explain why she acts so strange and gets violent throughout the story. It's possible that similar to the Glamrocks, the Mimic 1 program is altering her personality. Nexie's uncomfortable with how she looks, thinking she's ugly, and this begins to rub off on Astrid, making her view herself as ugly too. Her main goal in the story is fixing Nexie, which most importantly requires an endoskeleton. But the only place they can get that is the Fazbear repair facility under the Pizzaplex, which I'm assuming is the parts and service and endoskeleton warehouse area seen in the games. Astrid and Nexie break into the repair facility and complete an endoskeleton, but it turns out this new body isn't for Nexie, it's for Astrid. The next day at school, a boy named Remy witnesses the new Astrid enter the classroom. Her skin has been removed and stretched out to fit over a taller and broader body, that being the Pizzaplex endoskeleton. The horrific Astrid sits quietly in her seat, and Nexie seems content. It seems like all along, Nexie's been trying to change Astrid's appearance, not her own. Again, this disturbing behavior is possibly a side effect of the Mimic 1 program. Moving on from Tails, Glitchtrap is still scheming away with Vanessa. She's reluctantly following him, still not fully on board with his plans. After help wanted, she got a job at Fazbear Entertainment, where she has encrypted conversations with someone, likely Glitchtrap or Gregory, who was a young boy, seemingly corrupted by Glitchtrap 2, which is implied by his nickname at school being Dr. Rabbit. and him assisting Glitchtrap's takeover of the Pizzaplex, which we'll discuss later. It's further implied in the short story, GGY, that he's Glitchtrap's favorite apprentice. Both of Glitchtrap's followers have therapy sessions, with Vanessa's being company mandated, and Gregory meeting the therapist at school, where they work as counselors. Each time one of the therapists gets close to uncovering Glitchtrap's plans, Gregory lures them to the Pizzaplex, which he can sneak around thanks to a hacked playpass that he's modified to work more like a security badge. Once he's lured the therapists to the building, he kills them, either by using the animatronics or some sort of machinery. And eventually, he winds up with a new therapist, who will inevitably end up killing. We learn from these therapy sessions that as a child, Vanessa's dad, named Bill, made her follow instructions to make her mother look bad during their custody battle. Her mother lost custody, and it's implied that after losing her daughter, she tragically took her own life. It's revealed whoever Vanessa is communicating with has hacked her personal files, likely using all those traumatic details about her dad to further manipulate her. Vanessa says she's compartmentalized her feelings relating to her father, and since she hasn't resolved those, it likely allows Glitchtrap to manipulate her easier. She's also been purchasing fur to make a costume, and when the therapist asks further, she freaks out, saying someone would always be watching, likely referring to Glitchtrap keeping an eye on her. During this time, the Pizzaplex is hiring a chief security officer, and they interview Vanessa. There's a recommendation for her that came from the top of Fazbear Entertainment, but despite that, the interviewer didn't think she fit the job. However, this message was marked for deletion, and as shown in Security Breach, she ended up getting the position. The recommendation for Vanessa likely came from Glitchtrap and Gregory hacking Fazbear Entertainment, and they probably deleted the message denying her the job. Sadly, not even a new workplace can turn around Vanessa's luck. After reviewing communications going in and out of the building, the technicians discover Gregory manipulating someone, likely Vanessa. They also catch him on the security footage talking to something with rabbit ears, possibly Vanessa wearing the costume she had been working on, known as Vanny. Vanny is Vanessa's own rabbit character that she created back in Curse of Dreadbear, and it's seemingly based on David's white tiger plush. Note the similar suit color, eyes, and paws. Anyways, the technicians are struggling to fix some serious glitches with the Pizzaplex animatronics that make them act eerie. According to the current therapist, the glitch went system-wide and was broadcasting a very dangerous message. The technicians traced the glitch back to its origin, and it led them to Gregory, revealing that he's responsible for the Pizzaplex's glitches. When they were close to fixing the glitch, he turned into a set of subroutines in the animatronic systems, creating additional conversations and behaviors, seemingly allowing him to control them. While the animatronics continue to behave normally, they've secretly been turned into Glitchtrap's minions. The Storyteller might have been a parallel to these events, since both end with the Mimic, aka Glitchtrap, corrupting the Pizzaplex animatronics, but there's not much proof for this theory. However, I will say it would be pretty weird if the Mimic ended up corrupting the Pizzaplex twice. One of Gregory's classmates named Tony investigated the animatronic's strange behavior in the Tales from the Pizzaplex story, GGY. But Gregory lured him to the Pizzaplex and killed him to cover his tracks, with Vanessa at the head of the Pizzaplex's security, and Gregory's subroutines controlling the animatronics. Glitchtrap and Vanny claim at least 9 victims at the Pizzaplex, although one of them might just be Gregory, since he is classified as missing around this time. This leads into Security Breach, where the Pizzaplex is still under Glitchtrap and Vanny's control. However, a malfunction with Freddy during a performance caused him to be rebooted in safe mode, which seems to release him from Glitchtrap's influence. Gregory is similarly rabbit-free, but it's never explained how. Neither of them know what's going on. Both Vanessa and the other animatronics hunting Gregory, he teams up with Freddy to survive and escape. After failing to leave through either the prize counter or loading docks, Vanessa catches Gregory and traps him in Lost and Found. She tells him she knows who he is and he'll stay right there until his parents or the police arrive. But suddenly she turns into Vanny and begins to make her way to Lost and Found. Gregory escapes through a vent and flees Vanny. She continues to pursue him throughout the game, but her appearances are scarce and ultimately don't add much to the story. On the plus side, the Mimic plays a role in one of the endings. If Gregory upgrades Freddy with the other animatronics parts, they can enter the sinkhole and discover the pizza place. They enter the dining room, where there's a giant hole in the floor, leading further into the earth. Traveling down there, they discover the Tangle, a giant amalgamation of animatronics, featuring parts from Bonnie, Chica, Mangle, the puppet, Baby, and its main head is Funtime Freddy. It's never explained what this character is, but the Funtime Freddy head points to it being another version of Molten Freddy, aka Anard, who is an amalgamation of Afton's Funtime animatronics. However, it could also be an evolved version of the Mimic's pile of heads and limbs, which is referred to as a Tangle in the Epilogues. Or it might even be the remains of the Storyteller. Both the Tangle and Storyteller have a white animal head connected to wires. In Tiger Rock, Kai says the Storyteller's tree looks like a monster, and he can easily see it uprooting itself and stomping through the Pizzaplex, using its branches to grab children, which is similar to the Tangle's monstrous appearance and tendrils. Regardless of the case, Freddy and Gregory fall through the floor and land in some sort of security office. A cinematic shot sweeps through the building and reveals Burntrap, who resembles a much more decayed Springtrap. It's heavily implied he's the Mimic endoskeleton, judging from the Mimic's burnt appearance and rabbit ears in the Epilogues. Burntrap also curls his arm similar to the Mimic, and they have the same endoskeleton hand. It seems like after the Mimic was spring-locked and deactivated by Lucia, Vanny broke into the pizza place. Freddy says that she used him to clear the path to the building.
I know what this is. I have been here before. She brought me here. I found myself for the first time when I cleared the path. I did not want to, but I had no choice.
Vanny likely did this to find the Mimic and repair it. It's kind of a loose theory, but I don't think there's any other way to explain the Mimic being functional and having a Springtrap appearance. Despite going through all that effort to create Burntrap and make him look super cool, he's kind of just pathetic. In his boss fight, he just summons other Glamrocks and tries to corrupt Freddy. When he's being hacked, you need to activate the burners to stop Burntrap from taking control of him. After damaging the rabbit enough, the building begins to collapse. And as Burntrap stumbles away, the Tangle swoops in and abducts him. Ultimately, this doesn't matter all that much, since this ending is non-canon. In Security Breach's sequel DLC, Ruin, you can find comics from Gregory depicting almost every ending, showing that they're just figments of Gregory's imagination. The only ending that doesn't have a comic is the Princess Quest ending, which also is the only one that grants you 3 stars in the credits. This strongly implies it's the true ending. There are even more details in Ruin that add to its canonicity, but we'll get to those later. In the true ending, Gregory completes parts 1 and 2 of Princess Quest, an arcade game connected to Glitchtrap. In these, you play as a princess exploring a dark castle and evading the rabbit monsters within. At the end of the first arcade, you use a purple rabbit key to open a doorway, and inside is a giant version of Glitchtrap. He ensnares the princess with his tendrils, possibly as a reference to how Glitchtrap corrupted Vanessa at the end of Help Wanted. The second part features even more rabbit creatures, and ends with the princess entering the Five Nights at Freddy's office from Help Wanted. At the end of Security Breach, if Gregory has discovered Vanny's hideout in Phazerblast, he can choose to ambush her. However, Vanny summons the staff bots to disassemble Freddy, and Gregory flees into the Phazerblast server room. He escapes and stumbles into Vanny's hideout, where the third Princess Quest arcade resides. This entry continues in the Five Nights at Freddy's office, and leads into the Fazbear Entertainment virtual experience lobby from Help Wanted. Going further into the pizzeria rewards the player with the Glitchtrap plush. Connected to the opposite side of the pizzeria is the corn maze from Curse of Dreadbear, and just like in that DLC, Grim Foxy will pursue the princess throughout the maze. At the center of the structure is the Vanny mask, which Vanessa similarly collected from the corn maze in Curse of Dreadbear. These items were how she communicated with Glitchtrap and Help Wanted, and now they can be used to unlock a chest, granting the player with the purple rabbit key from Princess Quest 1. This once again opens a hallway, but now, the princess is on the other side of the door that Glitchtrap sealed Vanessa behind in the ending of Help Wanted. Upon opening the door, there's a glitchy scream and the arcade breaks down. Gregory looks out of the hideout to see all the staff bots deactivating and Vanny's mask lying on the floor, symbolizing that opening the door Vanessa was trapped behind in Help Wanted has freed her from Glitchtrap. Gregory collects Freddy's decapitated head, and as they're leaving, they see Vanessa, now in more casual clothing. The 3 of them leave the Pizzaplex and enjoy the sunrise together. However, their story isn't over just yet. Sometime later, the Tangle tunnels out of the sinkhole and into the Pizzaplex. It destroys the building. And even though Fazbear Entertainment tried to rebuild the establishment, it was ultimately left to rot. It's implied that around this time, Gregory and Vanessa returned to trap the Mimic. This is subtly hinted at throughout Ruin, with Gregory's comics being found throughout the abandoned Pizzaplex, and Burntrap's handprints being added in the sinkhole. All of these details paint a pretty clear story. After a security breach, the Mimic, still wearing the Burntrap appearance, wakes up in the charging pod and exits his lair through the vents, evident by a handprint appearing there in ruin. The print even matches up with Burntrap's sharp claws and dull bones. Sometime around this, Gregory and Vanessa explore the abandoned Pizzaplex, making their way through the bakery, judging from the multiple sets of human footprints. Eventually, Gregory enters the sinkhole and goes further into the pizza place to set a trap for the Mimic. And we know Gregory was there, since in the Ruin DLC, you can discover a Glamrock Freddy backpack with his name on it in the sinkhole. Gregory and Vanessa use Pizzaplex concrete to seal up the room where they plan to imprison the Mimic. Then, using a pair of Roxy and Freddy walkie-talkies, they set a trap for the animatronic. The Freddy walkie-talkie is left inside the prison and used as an audio distraction to lure the Mimic inside. It crawls into the room using an old vent, and upon realizing the trap, it quickly attempts to escape. Its Burntrap hand scratches up the vent as it tries to leave, but similar to Jace's plan in the Epilogues, the Mimic's weight causes the vent to collapse, severing the Burntrap hand and damaging its arm. In Ruin, there's visible damage around the arm, and since the last time we see the handprint is in the broken vent, it makes sense that this is when it broke off. However, it repairs itself with a new hand sometime before Ruin. Now that the Mimic is sealed inside the room, Gregory and Vanessa use a Pizzaplex forklift to bring the mech's security down into the sinkhole. This computer once again returns to counter the Mimic, although it's never explained how Vanessa and Gregory got it. It's possible that after Secret of the Mimic, Fazbear Entertainment retrieved it from the wreckage of MCM, since they own the land. Then after Security Breach, Gregory and Vanessa learned about the Cradle program in Mexes, and took it to integrate into the Pizzaplex system to contain the Mimic. It's never made clear if M1 still exists in the machine, but I kinda doubt it considering it no longer says F10 and 4. And since in the end of Secret of the Mimic, she enters standby mode. Gregory and Vanessa use the Mex's security to close the door over the Mimic's prison, and lock down the Pizzaplex by adding security nodes in the AR network. The AR network is a digital realm within the Pizzaplex that can be accessed by wearing the security mask, and despite its surreal nature, it still affects reality. The nodes in the AR network lock down areas that were previously accessible in Security Breach, most notably the sinkhole where the Mimic is trapped. The Mex's entity is also unleashed into the AR network. This rabbit creature's goal is to protect the security nodes and prevent the Mimic's escape. They're connected to the Pizzaplex animatronics, giving them the ability to summon the bots to deal with intruders. With the Mimic contained, Gregory and Vanessa once again leave the Pizzaplex. The following installment, Help Wanted 2, places the protagonist in the pizza place, with the security mask stuck to their face, trapping them inside the AR network. It's implied that we play as the father of the ruin and escape the Pizzaplex protagonist, Cassie. We know that her dad's favorite character was Bonnie. Along with this, a secret Bonnie mask can be discovered later in the game, with the implication that it belonged to the protagonist. Regardless of their identity, they're not alone in the AR network. Some parts of Glitchtrap still remain, and he occasionally sabotages the protagonist as they're playing the Pizzaplex's employee training simulations. After completing enough of these levels, the protagonist receives a Faz Wrench, which further hints that we're playing as Cassie's dad, who was a Pizzaplex technician and owned a Faz Wrench. When you unlock this item in Help Wanted 2, Mystic Hippo refers to it as a key, and says it should look familiar to the protagonist.
Use the key to confront the darkness. The key is familiar to you.
Which would make sense if we're playing as Cassie's dad, who owned one of these devices.
A Faz Wrench. It's just like my dad's.
This tool can be used to open the Pizza Place's storage room, which features Princess Quest 4 and an AR inhibitor. These prevent people from putting on or taking off the security mask, but after deactivating it, the protagonist can remove the mask and return to the real world, where they explore the now abandoned Pizzaplex and play some alternate versions of the training levels. The hard mode version of Bonkabon heavily features Glitchtrap. As the level goes on, you begin to hear his strange dialogue from Help Wanted, and his eyes watch you from the machine. His final appearance in this level is as a hand puppet named Tilt. This is yet another detail that connects Glitchtrap back to the Mimic. His appearance as a hand puppet is very reminiscent of the MCM theater puppets. This connection to the MCM puppets further implies Glitchtrap is the Mimic. Anyways, Tilt can be ignored. but if you hit him, the arcade breaks down and must be repaired. Taking too long to fix the machine will result in a jump scare from Tilt, which interestingly enough is the only time in the series where Glitch Trap can jump scare you. If the player progresses through the game normally, the Helpy assistant in the AR network gives them the Fast Force action figures. And once they're combined, Glitch Trap is summoned. His hand emerges from a charging pod in a reference to Burn Trap, and Nightmare staff bots swarm the player. It's then revealed that we've been turned into another staff bot, specifically Maskbot, who delivers the security mask to Cassie. The mask being delivered to her is a key part of the Mimic's plan to escape the sinkhole, which we see come together in Security Breach's Ruin DLC. Similar to Till, I believe this supports the theory that Glitch Trap is the Mimic. Him helping set up the animatronics escape definitely points them being the same character. Anyways, there is another ending involving the 4th Princess Quest arcade. In this ending, the protagonist follows hints in the AR lobby and receives the memories of Afton's victims from Glitch Trap. After collecting all these, the protagonist obtains a purple token, which can be used to play Princess Quest 4. This arcade starts out normally, but soon enough, the protagonist is pulled into the game, where the princess gives them her sword, which is used to fight the rabbit creatures as they progress through the castle. They eventually reach a courtyard where they light the graves of Afton's victims, which opens up a hallway with an old man, who previously appeared in Princess Quest 2. He takes the security mask in exchange for the Glitch Trap plush, and the protagonist enters the elevator from sister location. It opens up into a giant claw machine with Vanny looking in. The moon drops down, and after handing him the Glitch Trap plush, it's delivered to Vanny. The plush transforms back into his main appearance, but in a surprising twist, Vanny crushes him. She then waves at the protagonist and retreats into the darkness. It's ambiguous whether Vanny is Vanessa disguised, or if the Vanny persona has become its own creature in the AR network. Back in the lobby, Helpy is absent. Considering he tricks you into completing Glitch Trap's plan and disappears after he dies, it seems like Helpy was Glitch Trap all along, using the persona to gain the player's trust. Anyways, I don't think both endings are canon, considering the normal ending has the protagonist dying, so they can't do the Princess Quest 4 ending, and that ending kills Glitch Trap and Helpy, so the normal ending can't happen. Since that ending leads directly into Ruin, I'm gonna assume it's the canon route. It's also worth noting that Help Wanted 2 received an update teasing Secret of the Mimic. However, the update doesn't seem to have any impact on the story. However, we do collect David's White Tiger plush from Glitch Trap, further implying he's the Mimic. Following Help Wanted 2, the Mimic sends a message to Gregory's friend, Cassie. It copies his voice and tricks her into believing Gregory is trapped in the Pizzaplex. In the Security Breach DLC, Ruin, she travels into the abandoned building to save her friend, and finds a Roxy walkie-talkie. Using its own Glamrock Freddy walkie-talkie, the Mimic communicates with Cassie and continues pretending to be Gregory. It tells her that something won't let him go, and he's trapped in the sinkhole under Roxy Racers. So she journeys deeper into the building. After being attacked by Monty, she falls into some nasty sewer water that sweeps her way to Monty Golf. She keeps moving and is ambushed by Maskbot, and as shown in the Help Wanted 2 ending, he gives her the security mask. She puts it on and enters the AR network, where she encounters Helpy, and just like in Help Wanted 2, this devious guy is implied to be corrupted by the Mimic. At key points throughout the DLC, Helpy's eyes will turn orange, similar to the Mimic's iconic orange eyes, implying the endoskeleton is secretly puppeting him. I'll discuss this more later on, but it's very interesting how the Mimic repeatedly uses the Helpy persona, considering the original version of him, Mr. Helpful, was created by Edwin Murray. Maybe the Mimic is continuing to copy Edwin by using the Helpy persona. Back to Ruin, Cassie goes further into Monty Golf and finds a camera station. When using the camera's intercom function, Helpy will create a copy of her voice to lure Monty away. He explains he mimicked her voice using a couple of samples, and he says this while having orange eyes, clearly implying this is the Mimic. Shortly after, the Mimic tells Cassie to deactivate the security nodes so it can escape. As she's working to deactivate the first node, the Mex's entity appears. The Mimic tells her to stay away from them, and explains they send a distress signal to the animatronics when they encounter Cassie, so she has to be careful to avoid the entity. After entering the daycare, the Mimic informs Cassie of a way to reach the Monty Golf catwalks under the daycare theater, but she quickly encounters the ruined daycare attendant, with its moon side in control in the real world and its son personality trapped in the AR network. The son asks Cassie to reboot them, and the Mimic instructs her to use the lights to hurt the daycare attendant. After doing so, he malfunctions and can't move. Cassie quickly reboots him, turning him into Eclipse, who seems to be a fusion of the sun and moon's personalities. Luckily, he's friendly and flies Cassie out of the daycare. After reaching the catwalks, the Mimic instructs Cassie to redirect the gondola, and it gets some interesting characterization. If the player takes too long to progress through the area, the Mimic will tell him to hurry up.
Well, what are you waiting for?
Developing its impatient personality that was somewhat present in the epilogues. Later on, Cassie is ambushed by the Nexie entity, but the Mimic upgrades Helpy with a signal jammer that takes care of them. Something interesting here is that the Mimic responds to Helpy.
Yeah, with my help, I updated Helpy with a signal jammer. That rabbit thing won't bother you anymore.
Which further implies they're two separate characters. I think the Mimic 1 program corrupted Helpy, and his orange eyes signify when he's being influenced. After successfully redirecting the gondola, the Mimic congratulates Cassie, telling her she's getting closer. When she asks how he knows this or how he's doing any of this, it says he'll explain later, and dodges further questions by saying the thing in the sinkhole is back. If you're also wondering how the Mimic is assisting Cassie, it's likely because its AI was integrated into the Pizzaplex systems back when it was the Storyteller. Back to Ruin, Cassie reaches the bakery, but the Nexie entity returns and activates the AR inhibitor, which kicks Cassie out of the network. Helpy says they bypassed the signal jammer and activated one of their own. Cassie deactivates the inhibitor and continues into the server room, and Helpy says the area should be safe. However, the Nexie entity quickly returns, but Helpy defends himself by saying he claimed it should be safe, so he's not entirely wrong. From the server room, Cassie enters the Roxy salon, where Roxanne Wolf is crying after Gregory ruined her appearance. She nearly catches Cassie, but in the distance, she hears Gregory and runs off to pursue him. The Gregory voice here is actually the real Gregory, not the Mimic copying him. Later in the DLC, he tries to communicate with Cassie using a staff bot.
Cassie, is that you?
Gregory?
And in Ruin's ending, Gregory mentions he's been trying to reach Cassie all night, further implying this was actually him, not the Mimic. The audio file for the scene also refers to the voice as Gregory, not Grimmick, which is a mix between Gregory and the Mimic's names. This name is used for the Mimic's Gregory dialogue. Anyways, despite the real Gregory's interruption, the Mimic quickly comes up with another lie, saying he found a place to hide. Cassie deactivates the salon's security node and goes after Roxy, pursuing her deep into the raceway. However, she loses the Mimic's signal inside the raceway, but after a close call with Roxanne, she finally receives its signal. She asks what happened to the Pizzaplex, and it tells her something tunneled out and wrecked everything. As I previously discussed, this was the Tangle tunneling out of the sinkhole. Cassie then suggests calling for help, but the Mimic says there's no time. This line, along with plenty of others, are copied directly from Security Breach.
What? How is that supposed to help? There's no time. What? How is that supposed to help? There's no time.
I believe this further confirms the Mimic is still in the Pizzaplex's systems, as it would have had to be there to hear all these voice lines that later copies. After their brief conversation, Helpy directs Cassie to the remaining security nodes. After deactivating the node in Bonnie Bowl, Cassie travels through an AR tunnel to Fazerblast, and as she's spiraling through, a wireframe version of the Glitch Trap plush flies past. The tunnel drops her into Vanny's hideout, where the sword from Princess Quest 4 is stabbed into the third arcade, and a giant version of Glitch Trap is on the wall. In the real world, this is replaced by Glitch Trap Silhouette. The sword being stabbed into Princess Quest 3 and the Glitch Trap plush still residing in the AR network implies the Princess Quest 4 ending never actually happened, as the sword is still resting in the third arcade and Glitch Trap was destroyed in the ending, so his plush form wouldn't be in the AR network anymore. Once Cassie deactivates the Fazerblast node, she returns to Roxy Raceway. However, the Mimic tells her there's still one security node left, that being Roxy, who is Cassie's favorite character. The Mimic pleads for her to save him. She still believes she's helping Gregory, so she reluctantly deactivates Roxanne Wolf. Cassie then journeys into the sinkhole, and after traveling through some caves, she ends up in the pizza place's storage. Here she finds Candy Cadet, who tells her a story about a mother and a boy who lived in the woods.
There was a monster in the woods, but the mother caught it and kept it locked in the basement. The monster always made scary noises at night, but the mother would tell the boy not to worry because it could never get out. Then she would sing the boy a lullaby to sleep. One day, the monster stopped crying and instead listened and learned the lullaby. The next day when Mother went out to find food, the monster sang the lullaby from the basement. The little boy heard the lullaby and opened the door.
This story clearly parallels Ruin's plot. Just like the mother, Gregory trapped the mimic, but it copied his voice to trick Cassie into releasing it. Similar to how the monster copied the mother's lullaby to trick the boy into freeing it. Going further into the building, Cassie finds Burntrap's abandoned lair, featuring the previously mentioned handprints. She dives even further into the sinkhole, and reaches the mimic's prison. Nearby is the mech's security, and using a terminal, she deactivates it. The entity suddenly emerges from the machine, but is sucked back inside as it deactivates. The security door then opens, only to reveal concrete blocking the mimic's room. Cassie powers up a forklift that smashes through the concrete, and she jumps down into the room. It's littered with wardrobes and 2 costumes, that being the bird and the green and white elephant previously seen in Secret of the Mimic. In this room, Cassie finally comes face to face with the mimic.
Get out of here! Run!
As Roxy fends off the endoskeleton, Cassie flees, and is contacted by the real Gregory, who's been trying to reach her all night. His friend has maps of the building, and she needs to follow his instructions to escape the endoskeleton. During this conversation, the mimic can be heard fighting Roxy, and it sounds like it's copying her voice. Something interesting about this animatronic battle is that both of these characters were made by the Murrays. Fiona created the original Roxy puppet for David's first birthday, and Edwin made the mimic to replace David. Now their last standing creations are fighting. The battle ends with a loud thud, and a distorted voice saying Cassie's name. Suddenly the mimic appears. With one hand, it knocks over the forklift and jumps into the caves to pursue Cassie. Something really cool is the stinger that plays at the start of this chase is also used during Jackie's chase and Burntrap's boss fight. Another interesting detail is if you pause the game, you get a message saying you're burning up. These messages appear throughout the DLC and appear to be from the Mimic. What's significant about this one is it's the same thing Edwin told David when he gifted him a playground on his 4th birthday.
You're burning up!
Just like in the Epilogues, the Mimic isn't very fast, so Cassie is able to quickly flee the endoskeleton. The caves lead back into the pizza place, where her path is blocked by a closed elevator. The Mimic's footsteps slow down when Cassie reaches the dead end, seemingly toying with her since it assumes she's cornered. With her trusty Faz wrench, she powers up the elevator. The Mimic sees her escaping and speeds up. Cassie escaping the Mimic in an elevator seems to be a parallel to how Arnold also escaped it in Secret of the Mimic's unfinished business ending. As Cassie ascends, Gregory talks to her on the speakers, explaining how the Mimic tricked her into deactivating the security so it could escape. He tells her they can't risk being followed, and apologizes as the elevator is dropped. It falls at an alarming speed and crashes, abruptly ending the DLC and leaving Cassie's fate unclear. Ruin has 2 other endings, and we'll start off with the most unique one, the Scooper ending. On certain camera stations, the player can find hidden cameras, and upon viewing them, a door in the sinkhole opens up. If the player finds all 4 hidden cameras, the ending will play out differently. When Cassie meets the Mimic, it's now wearing an amalgamation of mascot costumes that somewhat resembles Gregory. Similar to him, it has brown hair, a blue shirt, and an orange bracelet in place of his Faz watch. And the lion costume snout has been ripped off to more closely resemble a human. Now obviously, this disguise doesn't resemble Gregory, but the Mimic is trying its best. The rest of the ending plays out mostly the same until Cassie reaches the pizza place. The doorway from the elevator ending is blocked by rubble, but Cassie can now flee through the door she opened on the cameras. She escapes into some sort of observation room and presses an ominous red button. Outside of the window, fog floods the area, As she's looking outside, the Mimic lunges towards Cassie and begins banging on the window. Suddenly, a giant claw-like scooper emerges and grabs the Mimic. When the fog clears, all that's left is an empty mascot costume, and the room's door is wide open, implying the Mimic escaped. Some people believe this scooper is the same one from Five Nights at Freddy's sister location. However, they look very different, but Steelwool's designs often vary from the original designs by Scott Cawthon. Another interesting thing about this ending is it visually parallels the Burn Trap ending, with the Mimic on the left side of the screen and something coming down from the right and dragging it away. The most bizarre outcome of Ruin is the Brazil ending, which can be achieved on either of the paths previously discussed. During the Mimic chase, before entering the pizza place, you can take a left and find a 70s Fredbear cutout. If you put on the security mask in front of it, you'll be transported into a scene of Gregory and Helpy sitting together and eating ice cream, with Vanessa in the distance. Gregory says he's okay and found a place to hide. Cassie breathes heavily as the DLC ends. This is all sorts of weird, but it was likely added to remove Gregory's connection to the crying child. In Security Breach's Princess Quest ending, Gregory is a Freddy ice cream with a bite taken out of it, and some people thought this connected him to the crying child, who was bitten by Fredbear. But in this ending, which clearly parallels the Princess Quest ending, Gregory's Freddy ice cream is replaced with just normal ice cream. 5 balloons can also be seen rising into the distance, which likely correlates to Afton's 5 main victims, who in Five Nights at Freddy's 3 were set free, and the balloons above them floated away. I assume this detail was added to confirm they're at rest. Looking at this from a story perspective though, this is likely the AR network making a happy scene for Cassie before the Mimic horrifically murders her. For now, the Mimic story ends here, but I'm sure it's far from over. I still think we have a lot to uncover in the past, especially since Secret of the Mimic ended on a cliffhanger. Maybe we'll get another game or DLC bridging the gap between Secret of the Mimic and Ruin, possibly a game adaptation about the events of the Epilogues. Regardless, we'll definitely be getting a follow-up to Ruin, focusing on the now freed Mimic. But for now, that's all we've got for you. If you did enjoy this video, please consider liking, subscribing, and joining our monthly membership. It helps support us, and you get a bunch of cool perks like shoutouts in our videos, custom emojis, badges next to your name, exclusive looks at upcoming projects, and more. Thanks for watching, and check out some of our other videos.